Deep beneath the gnarled roots of the great elder tree, a soft, persistent glow called out. Elara, a young elf whose curiosity was her greatest gift, reached into the earth and found it. A runestone, pulsing with a light that felt both ancient and alive. Her grandmother's stories whispered in her memory, tales of a legend no one believed was real. Yet here it was, solid and humming in her palm. She felt a pull, a profound urge to uncover the lost truth of the ancient elf kingdoms. To ignore this call would mean letting their magical heritage fade into mere myth, forgotten by time. But to answer it, she knew, might stir questions that had rested for centuries. What if the legends we dismiss hold the key to our future? By the end of this journey, you will discover how a single moment of courage can illuminate entire worlds thought lost forever. Where are you listening from right now, and what does the sky look like there tonight? What would you risk to save a story from being forgotten? The runestone felt warm and alive in Elara's hands. Her fingers trembled as she traced the intricate, glowing symbols carved into its surface. With each pass, the light intensified, humming with a low, melodic frequency. Then it happened. A shimmering, three-dimensional map erupted from the stone, hanging in the air before her. Ethereal continents and shimmering rivers depicted realms lost to all but the oldest songs. At its heart, one name pulsed with soft light, Sylvanoria. A gasp caught in her throat, but it was short-lived. From the corner of her eye, she sensed a shift in the deep woods, a pooling of shadows that felt more watchful than the night. The magic had announced itself, and something had answered. Her mind raced. Taking this to the village elders was the responsible path, the one she was expected to follow. Yet she could already hear their cautious voices, their fears of disturbing a peace built on forgetting. They would seal the stone away, and the map would fade back into legend. She could not let that happen. The only person she trusted was Kaelen, her oldest friend, whose steady hands and quick wit were as reliable as the sunrise. She found him at the edge of the village, and with a hushed urgency, she showed him everything. His eyes widened, but to her relief, he did not flinch. He simply nodded, his expression turning grimly determined. As they spoke, a change was already creeping into the world around them. From the ancient forest line, vines unlike any they had ever seen began to snake toward the village. They were twisted and thorny, their leaves a sickly, pale green that seemed to drink the moonlight. The runestone's activation was a beacon, and these creeping tendrils were the first, silent response. The peaceful isolation of their home was now a fragile illusion. With the spectral map seared into her memory, Elara knew their path. The first marker led to the Moonlit Glade, a clearing spoken of in whispers for its strange, beautiful flowers that bloomed only under the full moon. It was a place of serene power, and now it was the beginning of everything. The silver light of the full moon transformed the forest path into a river of mercury, guiding Elara and Kaelen to the heart of the woods. The air in the Moonlit Glade was still and heavy with the scent of night-blooming flowers, their petals glowing with a soft, internal luminescence. And there, half embraced by the earth, entangled in thorns, was the structure from the runestone's map. It was a grand archway of white stone, its surface carved with the same intricate symbols, now muted under a blanket of moss and time. Without a word, they began to work, their hands carefully pulling away the clinging vines to reveal the ancient craftwork beneath. As the last of the debris fell away, a fragment of an old lullaby, one her grandmother used to hum, surfaced in Elara's memory. She spoke the words aloud, her voice a soft echo in the silent glade. The symbols on the arch began to glow in sequence, and the space within the stone frame shimmered, dissolving into a pathway of swirling starlight. The portal's awakening was not a quiet event. From the surrounding darkness, shapes emerged low to the ground, their eyes reflecting the moonlight like chips of polished obsidian. The forest guardians, massive wolf-like beings with coats the color of shadow and bark, formed a silent, closing circle around the glade. Their low growls vibrated through the very soil. Kalin tensed, his hand drifting toward the knife at his belt, but Elara placed a calming hand on his arm. Fighting was not the answer here. These beings were protectors, not monsters. Her mind raced back to the small, smooth crystal she always carried, a trinket she used to capture stray moonbeams on clear nights. She drew it from her pouch, and the concentrated light within it pulsed warmly. With a deep breath, she knelt, holding the glowing crystal out in an open palm, an offering of pure, peaceful intention. The lead guardian stepped forward, its massive head dipping to sniff the offered light. The low growls ceased. A deep, resonant voice, felt more than heard, spoke into their minds. Your respect has spared you, child of curiosity. But know this, the path you walk was broken for a reason. The trials ahead will not be solved by cleverness or strength alone. They will test the truth within your heart. With a final, lingering look, the guardians melted back into the forest, their forms blending seamlessly with the trees. The way was clear. Taking Kaelin's hand, Elara stepped through the shimmering portal. The air itself changed, turning thick and tasting of ozone and old rain. Before them, beneath a sky of unfamiliar, swirling constellations, lay their destination. The grand entrance to Sylvanoria was a poignant sight, a majestic archway now fragmented and embraced by the same aggressive, pale green vines that had threatened their village, a silent testament to a kingdom that had fallen into a deep and unnatural stillness. The grand archway of Sylvanoria loomed before them, its ancient stone embraced by a lattice of pale, thorny vines. As they approached, a soft light glowed from a series of carved runes set into the arch itself, and a voice, not of a person but of the stone, resonated in their minds. It spoke a riddle. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I? Kaelin's brow furrowed in concentration, his initial confidence wavering under the pressure. An echo, he whispered, his voice tight with uncertainty, but the stone remained dark and silent. Elara closed her eyes, reaching past her fear and into the deep well of her grandmother's stories. She thought of the lullabies hummed in quiet glades, the tales of ancestors who listened to the forest itself. It is not just a sound, she realized. It is a voice that carries, that repeats and remembers. It is an echo. As she spoke the word aloud, the runes flared with a brilliant, golden light. A deep groaning sound filled the air as the intricate vines withered and faded to dust, and the massive gates slowly, majestically, swung inward. Their triumph, however, was fleeting. With a resonant boom, the gates swung shut behind them, and a shimmering, opaque barrier of pure magic sealed the exit. They were not just visitors, They were now participants, held inside a kingdom that asked for proof of their worth. Kalin looked back at the sealed gate, his face pale. "We are trapped." Elara placed a steadying hand on his arm. "We are not trapped," she said softly. "We are being tested. Remember all the stories we loved, the histories we studied. That knowledge is not just memory, Kaelen. It is a compass. Our love for our people and their legacy will guide us now." Before them, the path opened into a vast, shadowy hall. A low, indistinct murmur filled the space, a chorus of whispers that seemed to drift through the air like mist. This was the first trial, a hall of echoing whispers where every sound was a potential snare, a doorway to an illusion from which they might never return. Taking a deep breath, they stepped forward together into the whispering hall, ready to face whatever memories the ancient magic would conjure. The whispers in the hall were not mere sounds, but spectral scenes from Sylvanoria's past, shimmering into life around them. One moment, Elara heard the joyous laughter of elven children chasing fireflies, a vision so vivid it tugged at her heart. The next, a soft, sorrowful lament for a king from long ago wove through the air, a melody of deep feeling. She quickly understood the trial. Each echo was a potential doorway into a living memory, but only the voices carrying true emotion, the ones that felt heavy with real joy or authentic sorrow, marked a safe path. All others were beautiful, shimmering traps. A breathtaking illusion materialized before her, her own family, whole and happy, smiling and beckoning her into a sunlit garden. The pull was immense, a deep ache of longing, but she noticed the edges of the vision flickered, and their eyes held no true recognition. "It is not real," she whispered, her voice breaking as she turned her back on the beautiful lie, and the path before her solidified. Kaelen was not so fortunate. A powerful echo had taken hold of him, a resonant voice promising him the strength to protect his entire village, to become a legendary guardian whose name would never be forgotten. His eyes were glazed, his hand outstretched as he stepped toward the shimmering promise. Elara, seeing him drift toward a precipice of pure illusion, lunged forward and physically pulled him back. He stumbled, blinking in confusion as the false vision shattered. "We cannot trust what we want to hear, only what we feel is true," she told him, her own heart still pounding. She made a decision then, taking his hand firmly in hers and beginning to hum the ancient, calming melody her grandmother had taught her, the same one that had opened the portal. The simple, familiar tune became their anchor, a thread of reality in the chaotic tapestry of echoes. Strengthened by their bond and shared focus, they navigated the remainder of the hall, stepping only where the hum of true emotion resonated with their own hearts. As they reached the far end, the whispering ceased. The air stilled, and a single, shimmering object coalesced before them, a key woven from solidified starlight. It floated gently into Elara's open palm, warm and humming with a soft, directive power. Yet their victory was instantly tempered by a new, unsettling sound that echoed from the deeper darkness of the ruins, a slow, rhythmic scraping, like stone dragging against stone. Something else was awake and moving in the silence they had disturbed. The starlight key pulsed in Elara's hand, its light brightening and then stretching out like a slender beam, pointing unerringly down a grand, root-choked corridor. It was guiding them toward the Chamber of Roots, the legendary place where the very heart of Sylvanoria's magic was said to beat. The rhythmic scraping faded as they entered the Chamber of Roots, a vast cavern where the air itself felt heavy and slow. At its center stood the source of Sylvanoria's ancient power, the Tree of Life, but it was a sorrowful sight. Its once silver bark was gray and peeling, and its luminous roots were tangled into dull, brittle knots, their light all but gone. Elara did not hesitate. Guided by an instinct she did not understand, she stepped forward and pressed the warm starlight key directly against the largest, most faded root. A brilliant, healing light erupted from the point of contact, flowing like liquid starfire through the tangled network. Color rushed back into the bark, and the roots began to untwist and glow with a soft, pulsing rhythm. All around them, flowers of pure light bloomed from the cavern floor, pushing back the deep shadows. But life attracts those that feed on its absence. From the darkest corners of the chamber, the same pale, thorny tendrils they had seen at the village writhed into the light, reaching hungrily for the revitalized tree. They moved with a chilling purpose, seeking to snuff out the renewed magic. Kaelen acted instantly, his hands weaving a shield of shimmering, golden light, a determined barrier between the advancing shadows and Elara's crucial work. He braced himself, his muscles straining as the tendrils slammed against his magical defense, each impact threatening to shatter his hold. The tree's revival reached a crescendo, its branches stretching upward as a luminous form coalesced from its trunk. A guardian spirit, woven from living wood and gentle light, looked down upon them. Your courage has returned a heartbeat to this land. Its voice echoed in their minds, a sound like rustling leaves. But this is only a beginning. The other lost kingdoms, Aeralon in the skies and the deep earth realm of Myradar, have fallen to a deeper stillness. Their hearts are choked, and they fade with every passing moment. Time is a thread you must now race against. The spirit extended a hand, and a single, perfect leaf, glowing with a soft green radiance, drifted into Elara's palm. This will purify places where the blight has taken root, but use it wisely, for its power is finite. As the spirit's form began to fade back into the tree, Elara and Kaelen exchanged a single, determined glance. Without a word, they turned and ran from the chamber, the guiding light of the starlight key now pulling them urgently upward, toward the clouds and the forgotten sky realm of Aeralon. The singing cliffs rose before them, a sheer wall of crystalline rock that scraped the belly of the clouds. As Elara placed her hand on the first outcropping, the stone chimed with a clear, resonant note. A single tone, in what they now understood, was a vast, vertical instrument. Each handhold and foothold sang a different pitch, and the only way up was to match their sequence to the melody of an old wind song, a tune their people had hummed for generations. The climb became a duet with the mountain itself, a delicate dance of movement and music high above the world. A misstep was more than a simple error. It was a discordant shatter that threatened the entire ascent. When Kaelin's grip faltered on a note that was just a half step too high, the crystal beneath his feet fractured with a sound like breaking glass. The section of the cliff face crumbled away, and for a heart-stopping moment, he was falling into the open sky. Elara's reaction was pure instinct, her fingers weaving a spell she had only read about in old scrolls. A living vine, thick and strong, erupted from a seam in the rock, lashing around Kaelin's wrist and halting his fall with a jolt. He dangled there, breathing heavily, the ground a dizzying blur far below, This was not their only challenge. Fierce, unpredictable winds howled around the peaks, trying to pluck them from their precarious holds. With each gust, Kaelen froze, his knuckles white, his face pale. His deep-seated fear of heights was a physical weight trying to drag him down. Seeing his struggle, Elara knew they could not continue like this. She began to speak, her voice a calm counterpoint to the shrieking wind, teaching him a simple focusing chant used by ancient artisans to steady their hands for delicate work. It was not a song of power, but of presence, a rhythmic mantra to anchor the mind in the here and now. At first, his voice was a trembling whisper, but as he repeated the words, matching his breaths to the cadence, his grip steadied. He was not just a boy afraid of falling, he was a guardian on a mission, and that purpose became his strength. Together, they completed the climb, their movements and the chiming notes finally harmonizing into the song's triumphant finale. They pulled themselves over the final ledge and onto the summit, but their relief was short-lived. The fabled sky realm of Aeralon lay before them, a collection of floating islands adrift in a sea of churning, dark storm clouds. The elegant, arching bridges that had once connected the islands were shattered, their broken ends jutting into the empty air like ancient, weathered bones. The way forward seemed impossible. Remembering the Guardian's gift, Elara drew the purified leaf from her pouch. It glowed with a soft, persistent green light in her palm. Holding it toward the vast gap, she focused all her will on the idea of connection, of a path where none existed. A beam of pure, solidified light shot from the leaf, stretching across the abyss and forming a narrow, shimmering bridge. It was beautiful, but it trembled with each roll of thunder, a temporary and unstable construct. Taking a deep breath, they stepped onto the bridge of light, their feet meeting a surface that felt like walking on solidified air. As they reached the first floating island, the ground beneath them shifted uneasily, and a deep peal of thunder shook the very sky, a clear warning that their trials in this broken kingdom had only just begun. The central island of Aeralon was a scene of pure chaos, dominated by a massive crystal that pulsed erratically at its heart. Jagged cracks ran across its surface, spitting forks of wild energy into the sky and feeding the churning, violent storms that surrounded them. Elara knew this was the source of the realm's suffering. Without hesitation, she raised the Guardian's leaf, its pure green light flowing toward the fractured crystal in a gentle, soothing wave. The immediate fury of the storm began to subside, the howling winds softening to a mournful sigh. But as the light washed over the crystal, a more troubling truth was revealed. The main crack was not just on the surface. It delved deep into the crystal's core, a wound that the leaf's power could calm but not fully heal. Their momentary success became a new crisis. The surge of stabilized energy acted as a beacon, attracting sleek, winged forms that shot from the cloud cover. Storm serpents, their scales the color of bruised twilight, and their eyes glowing with malevolent energy, dove toward the crystal with piercing shrieks. They were not mere beasts. They were drawn to the power like moths to a flame, seeking to shatter it completely. "We cannot fight them all," Kalin shouted over the diminishing gale, his eyes fixed on the diving creatures. "But we do not need to fight them. We just need to outsmart them. I will draw their attention. You mend the crystal." As Kaelen raised his hands, creating brilliant, disorienting flashes of golden light that danced and weaved through the air. the serpents swerved to chase the enticing illusions. Elara turned her full focus back to the wounded crystal. Placing her hands directly on its cool, fractured surface, she closed her eyes and began the delicate work of a bonding spell, whispering words of unity and strength, urging the crystal's own magic to remember its wholeness. The deep crack began to slowly knit itself together, the light within it growing steadier and more pure. In that moment of deep connection, a fragment of understanding passed into her mind. These serpents were not acting on their own instinct. They were minions, extensions of a far greater shadow that was actively corrupting the heart of each kingdom, feeding on their isolation and despair. With a final resonant chime, the crystal mended, its light burning with a stable, radiant blue. The last of the storm serpents dissolved into wisps of shadow, their connection severed. The sudden calm was profound. As the clouds parted, a new path unveiled itself, a series of floating, stepping stones of condensed air that glimmered in the newfound sunlight, leading across the abyss to the next island. There, nestled among the clouds, stood the elegant, spiraling towers of the Library of Winds, its open archways promising the secrets they desperately needed to understand the true nature of the enemy they faced. The air within the Library of Winds was a living thing, a soft current that carried scrolls and floating books in a silent, graceful dance. Each parchment floated on its own path, a river of knowledge flowing through the open, spiraling towers. Elara and Kaelen waded through this gentle stream, their eyes scanning for the one text the guardian spirit had whispered of, the Tome of Skies. It was Kaelen who spotted it, its cover not of leather, but of woven cloud, resting on a pedestal of solidified air. As Elara opened it, the symbols on the page did not sit still. They swirled and rearranged themselves, forming a clear instruction. To fully restore Aeralon, the central wind harp, the instrument that composed the realm's very weather, needed to be recalibrated. And it could only be done by a duet of harmonized voices, singing an ancient elf hymn, a song of pure alignment. No sooner had they absorbed this knowledge than the gentle air currents turned sharp and hostile. A form coalesced from the very turbulence, a wind wraith of swirling darkness and silent screams. It tore through the library, its disorienting gusts scattering the floating scrolls into a chaotic blizzard of parchment, and its primary goal was clear: to silence them forever. The howling wind threatened to rip the very breath from their lungs. "We have to sing," Elara shouted over the gale, her voice strained. "We have to do it now." It was a desperate decision, to try and harmonize while a force of pure noise tried to tear them apart. Kaelen, his fear of the heights outside mirrored by this internal storm, met her gaze and nodded. They began the hymn, their voices shaky and thin at first, almost swallowed by the Wraith's fury. But as they continued, focusing on each other and the memory of their people, their voices found strength. Elara's clear soprano and Kaelen's steady baritone began to weave together, creating a tapestry of sound that the chaotic winds could not unravel. Their song became a weapon of order against the chaos. With each perfectly harmonized note, the wind wraith flickered and weakened, its form becoming less substantial. Their combined voices did not fight the wind, they guided it, their melody flowing out of the library and toward the realm's heart. They felt the moment it happened, a deep, resonant chord vibrating through the entire floating island as the great wind harp strings tuned themselves to their song. The Wraith dissolved into a final, harmless gust, and the library fell still, the scrolls gently settling back into their rhythmic dance. Outside, the last of the storm clouds parted, revealing calm, eternal skies. Yet their victory was once again a partial one. As the last note faded, the tome of skies shimmered, its pages showing not words, but a vision. They saw the third and final lost kingdom, Aquafallia, but it was not as the legends described. Where there should have been majestic waterfalls and crystalline rivers, there was only a churning, rising sea, swallowing the elegant coral structures in an unnatural, silent flood. The shadow had not been defeated, it had simply retreated, and its final stronghold was a kingdom drowning in sorrow. The tome's pages then went blank, its purpose fulfilled, leaving them with the chilling image of a world being erased by water. The final, resonant chord from the wind harp did not fade so much as transform, its vibration pulling a curtain of water aside from the cliff's edge, revealing a swirling, vertical portal into the depths. Without a moment to lose, Elara and Kaelen dove through the cascading veil, the air around them thickening into a cold, weightless embrace. They plunged into an endless, twilight blue, the world above vanishing into a distant shimmer. An ancient enchantment wrapped around them, a gift from the harp's song that let them draw breath from the water itself, though each gasp carried a profound chill that seeped into their bones. The realm of Aquafallia was a breathtaking vista of sunken grandeur, its elegant coral towers and arched bridges standing as silent monuments in the murky quiet. This was not the vibrant aquatic kingdom of legend, but a place held in a deep and sorrowful stillness. From the gloom, a school of small, luminous fish emerged, their soft, blue light pulsing in a gentle, beckoning rhythm. They swirled around the pair, then darted forward, clearly offering guidance through the labyrinth of ruins. Hope, however, was a fleeting sensation in these depths. Their luminous guides suddenly scattered as hulking, distorted forms materialized from the shadows. These were the corrupted water spirits, once graceful guardians now twisted into shapes of jagged coral and dark, swirling currents. Their eyes glowed with a hostile red light, and they moved with a singular, aggressive purpose, blocking the only path that led toward the distant, glowing spires of the sunken palace. A wall of swirling, abrasive energy began to form, a whirlpool of pure hostility. Elara's hand went to her pouch, her fingers closing around the last of the purified leaf. It was warm, its power a faint hum against her skin. This was the moment to use it, their only chance. With a soft, determined whisper, she released its remaining magic. A sphere of pure, shimmering energy erupted around them, a protective bubble that repelled the corrupted water and the spirit's violent currents. The hostile forms slammed against the barrier, their furious efforts unable to breach the leaf's final, sacred gift. As they swam forward, shielded by the bubble, Elara understood the deeper truth. These spirits were not evil by nature. They were infected, their essence poisoned by a central source of blight that was feeding on the heart of this kingdom. And with every passing moment, she could feel the harp's breathing enchantment weakening, a slow tightening in her chest that whispered their time here was running out. Pushing onward through the chilling, silent water, they followed the glowing spires, swimming toward the ancient sunken palace, where the legendary Waterstone was said to hold command over the tides themselves. The sunken palace throne room stood in a state of arrested decay, its pearlescent floors scattered with the delicate impressions of ancient sea life. At its center, the Waterstone rested on a dais of carved abalone, its gentle blue light dimmed beneath a strange, pulsating growth of dark coral. Elara moved closer, her heart heavy at the sight. She understood the need to clear the obstruction, but one unsteady motion could damage the stone and undo their quest. Using only her fingertips, she began the careful work, gently loosening and breaking the brittle dark growth away. Each fragment she removed drifted downward and faded into a wisp of shadow. As the last piece crumbled, the Waterstone pulsed with a sudden, brilliant flash. A deep resonant hum filled the water, and the entire palace trembled. All around them, the sea began to withdraw, the water level lowering with a slow, majestic purpose. As the walls were uncovered, breathtaking murals emerged from the retreating water, showing early communities living alongside great sea beings and shaping cities from living coral. The story of Aquafallia was literally coming to light, but the cleansing had a cost. From the deepest trench beyond the palace, a massive shape uncoiled. The Shadow Corruptor was a being of pure darkness, an eel-like form with eyes that burned like embers and a presence that seemed to drain the light. It moved with alarming speed, its single aim to reclaim the stone and return the kingdom to its silent state. It is drawn to the stone's energy, Kaelen realized, his voice tense. I can give it something else to focus on. He raised his hands, and a spectacular display of shimmering golden orbs and twisting ribbons of light bloomed throughout the throne room. The creature paused, its dark gaze shifting between the distracting brilliance and the pulsing Waterstone, confused by the sudden sensory overload. Seizing the moment, Elara pressed both her palms against the now clear surface of the Waterstone. She poured all her will, all her care for the forgotten kingdoms, into the ancient artifact. A wave of pure azure power expanded outward, washing over the palace and through the surrounding waters. The corrupting shadow was pushed back, its influence cleansed in an instant. The creature released a silent, furious scream that resonated through their very being before it twisted away, retreating into the abyssal darkness. Its final thought echo lingered in their minds. You have won a battle, not the war. The final kingdom awaits, and there, you will face the fire. As the last of the water drained away to reveal a perfectly preserved air-filled palace, a new wonder appeared outside the grand archway. A bridge woven from every color of light, a solid rainbow, arched across the void, its far end vanishing into a haze of shimmering heat. It led to the last and most challenging of the lost kingdoms, Ignisia, the realm of fire and forge, where the ultimate meeting with the shadow awaited. The rainbow bridge felt solid as polished quartz beneath their feet, but with each step, a dry, oppressive heat began to rise, carrying the sharp scent of brimstone and hot metal. Before them, the realm of Ignisia unfolded in a panorama of raw power, a land where rivers of molten rock carved glowing paths between colossal citadels of blackened iron and bronze. A low, constant rumble vibrated through the soles of their boots. They had barely set foot on the obsidian shore when the bridge of light behind them shimmered and dissolved into a cascade of fading colors, leaving only a sheer cliff face and a dizzying drop into a sea of fire. Retreat was no longer an option. The air grew thick with fine gray ash, stinging their eyes and coating their throats. Through the shimmering haze, they saw it, the Shadow Corruptor from the depths, a dark stain of malevolent energy flowing into the mouth of the central volcano. As it merged with the mountain, the volcano roared in response, spewing a fresh torrent of lava and shaking the ground with renewed fury. "We cannot fight that thing directly," Kaelen shouted over the tumult, his voice strained. "Our magic is almost spent." Elara's gaze was fixed on the raging mountain. "The old tales speak of the Fireheart gem," she replied, her words steady despite the tremors. "It was the artifact the ancient fire smiths used to calm the very first eruptions, to bring balance to the forge. It is the only thing that can purify that shadow and save this kingdom." The decision was made, a desperate gamble with the highest stakes. Every footfall sent a fresh tremor through the unstable ground, a constant reminder that the entire realm was on the verge of tearing itself apart. The gem's location was the greatest challenge of all. Its legendary power was said to be housed deep within the volcano's heart, a place no living being was meant to enter. Searching the ashen plains, their eyes fell upon a narrow path etched into the obsidian, its surface marked with the familiar, flowing script of the Ancient Elves. The inscriptions glowed with a faint, persistent light, a guide left by a people who knew one day their home would need saving. Without a word, they turned from the open fury of the lava fields and stepped into the dark, smoky mouth of a tunnel, the first step on a path leading directly into the belly of the mountain. The volcanic tunnel swallowed them in a darkness broken only by the faint, angry glow of distant lava flows. The air was thick and acrid, and the floor beneath their feet was a treacherous mosaic of heated stone and hidden pressure plates. Each step had to be deliberate, a careful test of weight. A correctly placed foot would cause a faint chime, and a wall of obsidian would retract with a low rumble, revealing a new path forward. A misstep, however, sent a tremor through the passage, and a nearby vent would release a sudden, searing fountain of molten rock, forcing them to leap back. They moved in a tense, silent dance, their progress measured in inches and near misses. Then it happened. Kaelen, his focus divided between the floor and a low overhang, stepped onto a plate that did not chime but crack. The sound was like a thunderclap in the confined space. The ceiling directly between them shattered, and a cascade of heavy, sharp rock poured down, sealing the tunnel and cutting Elara off from her friend. For a terrifying moment, there was only the roar of falling stone and the oppressive heat. "Elara!" Kaelin's shout was muffled and distant, echoing strangely through the new barrier. "I am all right. The path splits here. I can see another route." His voice was tight, but clear. They were separated, but not silenced. Alone in the side tunnel, Kaelen found his own progress blocked almost immediately. From fissures in the walls, small, skittering forms emerged. Fiery imps, their bodies made of flickering cinder and molten rock, hissed and spat embers as they advanced. They were not powerful, but they were numerous, a swarm clearly sent to harry and delay him. He could not fight them all, not in the narrow space. He raised a shimmering shield, but the constant barrage of their small, hot bodies was already straining his magic. "I am surrounded," he yelled, the frustration clear in his echoing voice. "I cannot get through." On the other side of the collapse, Elara heard the strain in his words, and knew brute force would not save him. She pressed her hands against the warm stone of the tunnel wall, closing her eyes. She thought of the chiming plates, of the way sound traveled through the mountain. Focusing her remaining energy, she cast a gentle vibration spell, sending a soft, rhythmic pulse through the living rock. A steady beat meant to guide him like a compass needle, pointing true north. Follow the pulse, Kaelen. It will lead you to me. Trust it. Back in his tunnel, Kaelen felt the subtle thrum in the stone beneath his feet, a calm and consistent signal amid the chaos. He stopped trying to push forward against the imps, and instead began to sidestep, letting Elara's spell pull him along the wall. He moved with a new purpose, the imp's attacks becoming less focused as he flowed with the guidance. When he finally rounded a bend and saw Elara ahead, their relief was instantaneous. Without a word, they joined their magic. Elara's gentle vibration met Kaelin's brilliant light, and together they created a wave of harmonic energy that washed over the imps, not destroying them, but destabilizing their fiery forms. The creatures popped and fizzled into clouds of harmless smoke and scattered embers. The way was clear, but the air itself felt heavier, thick with the corruptor's malevolent will. The volcano gave another violent shudder, and a fresh crack opened in the wall, bleeding a slow stream of lava. They were closer to the heart chamber. They could feel it, a pulling sensation in the very core of their being. But the shadow knew they were coming, and its desperation made the mountain itself its weapon. The tunnel ended at a vast, seamless door of black iron, cold to the touch despite the surrounding heat. As they approached, runes ignited upon its surface, burning with two distinct energies. One rune blazed with the white-hot fury of a forge, the other shimmered with the pale, absolute cold of deepest winter. A voice, both sizzling and frozen, spoke a final challenge into their minds. I am born of flame, yet quenched by water. I can be a destructive inferno, or a preserving chill. What am I? The answer was the only key that would open the way to the Fireheart gem. The chamber of the Fireheart was a crucible of pure elemental fury. In its center, the legendary gem floated above a churning pool of lava, but its brilliant red light was held within a cage of writhing, black energy that pulsed with a heavy, unsettling rhythm. Elara reached out instinctively, but a sharp, psychic jolt of pure opposition shot up her arm, forcing her back. The cage fed on imbalance, and it could not be broken by force alone. It required a perfect synthesis of opposites, the very essences of the kingdoms they had saved. Kaelen understood immediately, his hands already gathering the restless winds of Aeralon into a swirling vortex of compressed air. Elara closed her eyes, calling upon the memory of Aquafallia's depths, summoning a sphere of pure, calming water that condensed from the steam, filled air around them. They had to act as one, now Elara, together. Their voices merged in a single command, and the twin forces of wind and water shot forward, not as separate attacks, but as a single, spiraling lance of harmonious power. It struck the dark cage, and for a moment, the entire chamber held its breath. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, the cage dissolved into fading fragments of shadow. The success was a spark that ignited the final confrontation. From the lava pool, the shadow corruptor rose, its form coiling and expanding into a vast draconic shape, woven from smoke, embers, and deep opposition. Its roar was the sound of the mountain, straining under immense pressure. It lunged not for them, but for the now unguarded Fireheart gem, its massive claws outstretched to claim the source of Ignisia's power forever. This was its last, desperate attempt. Elara did not hesitate. She threw herself forward, her fingers closing around the worm, pulsating gem, just as the corruptor's claws swept through the space she had occupied. The moment she touched it, a wave of pure, cleansing warmth, not of destruction but of renewal, flowed through her. The gem was not a weapon, it was a heart, and it remembered its purpose. Kaelen stood beside her, his own magic flaring as a shield against the corruptor's scorching breath. The final stand for the fate of all the kingdoms would not be won by overwhelming their foe, but by restoring the very land it sought to claim. Elara lifted the Fireheart gem high above her head, and a wave of pure, warm light erupted from its core, pushing back the suffocating darkness. The corruptor recoiled with a shriek of tearing metal, its draconic form wavering as the light washed over it. Kaelen stood before Elara, his golden shield flaring brightly as he deflected a barrage of molten rock and sharp tendrils of solidified shadow. The chamber shook violently, and the air sizzled with the clash of opposing forces. The gem's light was healing the corruption, peeling away layers of shadow, but the entity fought back with a desperate, wild fury. A whip-like tendril of darkness, too fast to block, snapped past Kaelin's defense, striking his shoulder. He cried out, stumbling to one knee as a numbing cold spread from the wound, and his shimmering shield flickered, its light dimming. Their defense was crumbling. Elara felt a surge of panic, her focus threatened by the sight of her injured friend and the erupting chaos. Then, she remembered the harmony that had calmed the storm serpents and silenced the wind wraith. Closing her eyes against the inferno, she drew a steadying breath and began to sing the ancient hymn from Aeralon. Her voice, clear and strong, wove through the gem's radiant energy, amplifying its purifying power with a melody of unity and peace. The corruptor's form began to shrink and dissolve, its angry roars softening into fading whispers of nothingness, but their victory unleashed the mountain's full rage. The ground split open, and rivers of lava surged upward, swallowing the chamber floor. As the last wisp of shadow vanished, the Fireheart gem pulsed with a final, triumphant burst of energy. The light did not fade. Instead, it flowed downward, etching a brilliant teleportation circle into the obsidian at their feet. The world dissolved into a blur of light and heat, and then, suddenly, it was gone. They found themselves kneeling on cool, solid ground, the deafening roar replaced by an unnerving silence, the air clean and still around them. The cool stone of the ridge was a profound relief beneath their hands and knees. Before them, the realm of Ignisia was remaking itself. The Fireheart gem's light washed across the land like a gentle tide, and where it touched, the rivers of lava cooled into gleaming obsidian roads, and the angry fissures in the earth sealed over with carpets of hardy, glowing moss. The oppressive heat gave way to a comfortable warmth, the kind from a well-tended hearth. In the distance, the other kingdoms shone as beacons of renewed life. Sylvanoria's forests were a tapestry of deep, vibrant green. Aeralon sky islands floated in a serene, cloudless blue, and Aquafallia's waterfalls glittered like strings of diamonds in the sun. The silence that followed was not empty, but full, a world finally at peace with itself. Yet the cost of that peace was written in their own weary bodies. Every muscle ached, and Kaelin's shoulder, where the shadow's touch had landed, was stiff and numb. The triumphant vista seemed to stretch for an impossible distance, and the thought of the long, arduous journey back to their village felt like another mountain to climb. They had achieved everything, and now they had nothing left to give. Elara looked at Kaelen, seeing her own exhaustion mirrored in his eyes, and a simple, clear idea formed. We cannot walk back, but we do not have to. Let us call for them. Using the very last dregs of their magic, they joined hands and focused not on a spell of power, but on one of connection. A single, pure note of light, woven from their combined will, rose from their clasped hands and shot into the sky, a silent beacon of hope and a plea for the friends they had made. The answer was immediate. The air shimmered around them, and the guardian spirits they had aided materialized one by one. The living wood spirit from Sylvanoria, the serene wind warden from Aeralon, and the graceful water weaver from Aquafallia stood together, their forms radiating strength and gratitude. You have done what was thought impossible. The wood spirit's voice rustled in their minds. You have not just saved kingdoms, you have rekindled a song that was nearly lost forever. As one, the spirits extended their hands. A wave of soothing energy flowed over Elara and Kaelen, mending their cuts and bruises, the deep weariness lifting from their limbs like a heavy cloak being removed. The numbness in Kaelen's shoulder faded, replaced by a comforting warmth. The spirits then offered a final gift, a swift and gentle passage home, a journey that would take moments instead of days. As the world began to blur around the edges, Elara took one last look at the restored kingdoms, their beauty, a permanent memory etched into her heart. The magic swept them away, carrying them from the epicenter of a remade world back to the quiet, familiar edge of their own village, where the morning sun was just beginning to touch the rooftops, and life continued, blissfully unaware of the legends that had just been reborn. The first rays of dawn painted the village rooftops in soft gold as Elara and Kaelen stepped from the forest edge. A crowd had already gathered, their faces a mixture of relief and profound awe. The village elders, who had always urged caution above all else, stood with tears in their eyes, for they had witnessed the impossible from their own doorsteps. All through the night, the distant realms had glowed with a light not seen for centuries, painting the horizon with colors of renewed magic. You have returned the song to our world, the head elder whispered, his voice thick with emotion, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. We called you reckless, but you were brave. You are the heroes who woke our heritage from its long sleep, but not every face in the crowd shone with gratitude. A murmur of concern rippled through the gathering as a farmer gestured toward the now visible, shimmering outline of Aeralon in the sky. What else did you wake along with those kingdoms? A voice called out. What if that light draws attention from beyond our woods, from things that remember the old magic and might wish to claim it for themselves? The celebration fractured into a tense debate, the community dividing between those who saw a rebirth and those who feared a target had been placed upon them. Elara listened to the fear, understanding its roots. She stepped forward, the steady glow of the runestone warm against her chest, where it now rested on a simple cord. Hiding from our past did not keep us safe. It only made us forget who we are, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the morning air. The true protection is not in silence, but in understanding. We cannot be the only two who know how to listen to the realms. Let us teach others the old ways, the songs, the stories. If everyone shares the duty of guardianship, then no shadow, old or new, can ever overwhelm us again. Her words settled over the crowd, a quiet challenge and a promise. The runestone at her chest, pulsed gently, its light no longer a fleeting secret, but a constant, comforting presence, a symbol that their connection to the lost kingdoms was now a permanent thread in the fabric of their lives. As the village slowly embraced this new beginning, sharing food and stories under the brightening sky, Elara felt a distinct, gentle tug from the stone, not of alarm, but of invitation. The adventure was over, yet the journey, it seemed, had only just begun. The village square shimmered with 1,000 points of light, from softly glowing orbs floating among the branches to pathways of luminescent moss laid down by the children. The Festival of Light was more than a celebration. It was a living classroom. Elara and Kaelen moved through the gathering, not as distant heroes, but as patient guides. Elara showed a group of wide-eyed youngsters how to coax a gentle hum from a smooth river stone, while Kaelen demonstrated a simple charm to weave strands of sunlight into a temporary, shimmering cord. They shared not just spells, but the stories behind them, explaining how the wind song from Aeralon could soothe a restless mind, or how the focusing chant from Ignisia could help steady nervous hands for delicate work. A new energy buzzed through the community, as adults who had never felt a spark of magic found they could now make a dormant flower bud bloom with a whispered word of encouragement. The shared wonder was knitting the village together in a way it had not been for generations. Yet, from the periphery, a small group of elders watched with folded arms and concerned expressions. One approached Elara, his voice low and earnest. "You have given us a great gift, but you are also handing out fire. What happens when a well-meaning but unprepared heart tries to calm a storm and instead feeds it? This power must be treated with reverence, not revelry." Elara listened, her own joy tempered by the weight of his warning. She knew he was not wrong. "I will lead by example," she promised, her gaze sweeping over the celebrating villagers. "We will learn together, and I will ensure this magic is always a tool for protection and growth, never for harm. It is a responsibility I accept completely." As the moon reached its highest point, a collective gasp rose from the crowd. The runestone at Elara's chest pulsed, and a new image flickered above the square. It was another map, but this one was fainter, its continents sketched in ethereal silver, as if seen through a deep mist. It showed coastlines and mountain ranges that were utterly unfamiliar, hinting at realms lost to even the oldest songs. The message was clear. Their journey had healed the world, but it had not uncovered all its secrets. Later, under a canopy of unfamiliar stars now dotted with floating islands, Elara and Kaelen sat with blank parchments and freshly cut quills. "The first task is to write everything down," Kaelen said, his tone thoughtful. "Every song, every symbol, every lesson from the Guardians. If this knowledge is only in our heads, it is as lost as the kingdoms once were." Elara nodded, her hand resting on the warm runestone. "This is not the end of our duty, but the beginning of a new one, to preserve this wisdom so that whoever follows, whether tomorrow or in 100 years, will have a guide to light their way." Elara's sleep that night was not a retreat from the world, but a deeper immersion into it. The ancient elf kings and queens stood before her not as stern rulers, but as grateful kin, their forms woven from starlight and memory. They did not speak with words, but showed her a vision of breathtaking unity. Sylvanoria's roots intertwined with Ignisia's forges. Aeralon's winds carried the mist from Aquafallia's waterfalls, and all the realms pulsed together in a single, harmonious rhythm. It was a symphony of existence, a testament to what their people were always meant to be. Their gratitude washed over her, a warm and profound acknowledgement of her service. Yet within that beautiful dream, a sobering truth was revealed. The shadow they had faced was not a random creature, but a lingering echo of an old conflict, born from jealousy and a refusal to share magic. It was a sorrow that grew when the kingdoms first chose isolation over cooperation. The vision made it clear that forgetting this history, however difficult, made its repetition inevitable. She awoke with the first light, the profound sense of connection still thrumming within her. Her role was no longer just that of a restorer, but of a bridge, a living link between the wisdom of the past and the potential of the future. The idea came to her fully formed, as if gifted by the dream itself. She would write a book, a volume that wove the thrilling account of their adventures with the timeless lessons of the Ancient Elves. It would be part story, part guide, and part reminder. This book could become a beacon, uniting scattered elf communities with a shared history and a common purpose, healing the old divisions that had made them vulnerable. Yet such a powerful collection of knowledge would be a double-edged sword. While it could guide and protect, it could also attract the attention of those who would seek to twist its wisdom for control or personal gain, potentially igniting the very conflicts it was meant to prevent. The risk was immense, but the cost of silence was greater. As the village still slept, she lit a single candle at her desk, the flame a tiny echo of the Fireheart gem. She unrolled a fresh parchment, her quill poised above the blank surface, ready to give shape to the memory. The door creaked open softly, and Kalin entered, his face calm and resolute. Without a word, he set a pot of ink and a bundle of fine brushes on the table. "I saw the realms too, in my own way," he said quietly. "The memories are etched behind my eyes. Let me help you tell the story. Let me give it a face." He took a seat beside her, and as Elara began to write the first words, he selected a brush, ready to illustrate the pages with the vivid images of their journey, ensuring that every reader would not just learn the lessons, but feel the wonder. The first words flowed from Elara's quill as naturally as breath. She described the cool earth beneath the great elder tree, the sudden warmth of the Runestone, and the undeniable pull that called her toward the unknown. As she wrote the final sentence of the chapter, a soft, golden light emanated from the freshly inked parchment, the letters themselves shimmering as if infused with starlight. The magic of the kingdoms was not just a memory in her story, it was a living participant, blessing the project with its approval. This beautiful sign, however, brought a difficult choice to the forefront of her mind. She paused, her quill hovering over a new page. How much of the true concern should she share? The moments when the shadows felt overwhelming. She looked at Kaelin's illustrations of the Whispering Hall and the Storm Serpents, his art capturing the grandeur, but softening the visceral intensity. To tell only of the wonders would be a disservice, a pretty story that would leave future readers unprepared. Yet to focus only on the difficulty could discourage them. She made her decision. Dipping her quill once more, she chose to frame every challenge not as an insurmountable obstacle, but as a necessary test that revealed their own inner strength. She wrote of how Kaelin's unease with heights became a lesson in trust, and how her own longing for those who came before taught her to value the family she had found in their friendship. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act alongside it. As she wrote this philosophy onto the page, another wonder occurred. A small, new illustration of a bridge, woven from light, subtly appeared in the margin of a previous page. Its design slightly different from the one Kaelen had drawn, as if the book itself had updated the record to reflect a deeper truth just learned. The tome was not a static object, but a living chronicle that evolved as their understanding of the realms deepened. Finishing the chapter's final words, she felt a gentle, unexpected breeze flutter through the closed window, carrying the faint, sweet scent of cloud pine and a profound sense of watchful peace. The wind spirits of Aeralon were bearing witness, their silent presence a promise that this story would never be alone. A soft rustling of leaves filled Elara's quiet room, though her window was shut tight. The guardian spirit from Sylvanoria stood beside her desk, its form woven from dappled sunlight and the deep, earthy scent of the forest. It was a vision meant for her eyes alone. Your chronicle is a vital thread in the great tapestry. Its voice echoed gently in her mind. To ensure its wisdom endures, let me share a secret of preservation. It reached out a hand of living wood, and a delicate, shimmering symbol appeared in the air before her, a pattern that spoke of memory and protection. Repeat this when you finish a page, and no force of time or carelessness will mar its words. Elara felt a profound sense of reassurance, but it was swiftly followed by a quiet caution. The spirit's luminous eyes seemed to look into a future she could not yet see. Remember, child, magic that is forgotten does not vanish. It merely sleeps, and when it wakes, it can surface in forms we do not expect, in places we thought safe. The balance you helped restore is a living thing, and it will need a guardian who listens. Elara understood the unspoken request. She did not hesitate. Will you visit me in my dreams sometimes, she asked, to help me stay connected, to know if the realms have need. It was not a small request, and she felt the weight of it settle upon her. The spirit inclined its head in a gesture of deep respect. Your heart chooses the path of the true steward. This bond will let you act with speed if a shadow ever stirs again. But know this, to be so tied to the magic of the kingdoms is to weave their fate into your own forever. Your life and their well-being are now intertwined. The spirit's form began to soften, fading like morning mist under the sun's first rays. As it dissolved, a final, gentle warmth filled the room, carrying with it the unmistakable, hopeful fragrance of early spring blossoms. Elara was left alone with a renewed sense of duty and the quiet understanding that her most important work was just beginning. The garden began as a small patch of earth behind Elara's home, sown with the luminous seeds gifted by the Tree of Life. Within days, sprouts unfurled into plants that seemed to breathe with a soft, inner light. Flowers the color of moonlight opened their petals each evening, casting a gentle glow that made lanterns unnecessary, while silver-leafed herbs released a soothing fragrance that eased worries and mended minor hurts. This little plot quickly became the village's quiet heart, a place where children learned the names of healing plants and elders sat in peaceful contemplation, their spirits lifted by the ambient magic. Yet this wonder was not without its mysteries. Some of the vines displayed a curious awareness, tenderly curling around a child's dropped toy to return it, or shifting their position overnight to better catch the sun's rays. While many found this beautiful, a murmur of unease spread among others, What if the plants decided to grow where they were not wanted? Or what if this magic, however gentle, became unpredictable? Elara understood their concern. She knew that trust was built through shared responsibility, not imposed wonder. She created a rotating schedule, inviting small groups of villagers to help with the watering and tending, teaching them the simple songs and respectful gestures that encourage the plants to thrive in harmony with their caretakers. This daily care became a subtle but essential ritual, a way to nurture the bond between the community and the magical world they were now part of. The garden's vitality was a direct reflection of this relationship, flourishing with their attention, but always hinting at a wild, untamed potential just beneath the surface. It required constant, gentle stewardship to guide its growth without stifling its spirit. One afternoon, as Kalin was carefully trimming back a particularly vibrant cluster of star flowers, his attention was caught by a unique plant at the garden's center. It had grown taller than the rest, and at its apex, a single, intricate bud was forming, its surface shimmering with a light that seemed to swirl like liquid starlight, uncannily resembling a tiny, waiting portal. The star-shaped bud at the garden center unfurled with a soft, chime-like sound, its petals opening to reveal not a flower heart, but a gateway. Within the delicate frame shimmered a perfect miniature view of Sylvanoria's sun-dappled forest floor, a window to another world no larger than their hands. They could feel the gentle, humid air of that realm and smell the rich scent of ancient soil. It was a connection, but a fragile one, built for whispers and small tokens, not for people. Elara carefully rolled a tiny parchment with a greeting and slipped it through the opening, and moments later, a luminous seed tumbled back into her palm, a gift from the watching guardian. This was a miracle, but also a profound secret. They knew that revealing such a direct link to a lost kingdom would shatter the village hard-won peace, inciting either reckless greed or paralyzing fear in those not yet ready to understand its purpose. That very night, they made a solemn pact under the moonlight, a vow to use this bridge only for sharing wisdom and offering aid, never to ask for power or treasure for themselves. This self-imposed rule was their first true test as stewards, a conscious choice to guard the magic from the very community they sought to uplift. The portal was a lifeline that could guide them through future storms, yet in the wrong hands, it could become a source of conflict that unraveled everything they had rebuilt. For weeks, their secret exchanges brought only gentle guidance and new seeds for the garden, until one crisp morning, a tightly wound scroll drifted from the shimmering window. Unrolling it, Elara's eyes widened at the message from the Wind Warden of Aeralon, a brief report of strange, dissonant vibrations humming from a forgotten corner of the sky realm, a minor disturbance that requested their watchful attention. The Wind Warden's scroll lay open on the desk, its message clear. A young cloud whale calf, a creature of gentle mist and soft thunder, had been separated from its pod by lingering magical turbulence in the high reaches of Aeralon. Alone and frightened, its plaintive calls echoed through the empty sky lanes. Elara felt a pang of deep sympathy, remembering the fear in Kaelin's eyes on the singing cliffs. They had to help. Through the tiny garden portal, they could see the distant, shimmering form of the lost calf, adrift and confused. There was no time for a journey, only for a gesture of pure guidance. Elara began to hum the same calming hymn that had silenced the wind wraith, her voice a soft thread of reassurance sent across the realms. At the same time, Kalin focused his will, weaving a single, brilliant guide light, a miniature star that shot through the portal to bob gently before the calf, offering a beacon toward the distant, welcoming calls of its family. It was a delicate operation, requiring their complete focus. Just as the calf began to follow the light, the sound of excited laughter and running feet echoed from the path outside their garden. The village children were coming, drawn by the unusual afternoon light. They were moments from discovery. Thinking quickly, Kaelen knocked a clay pot from a nearby shelf. It shattered on the stone path with a loud, distracting crash. "Hey, over here," he called out, feigning frustration. "Looks like I have a mess to clean up. Can anyone lend a hand?" The children, always eager to be helpful, rushed toward the sound of the accident, their attention successfully diverted from the glowing secret hidden among the flowers. Their hearts still pounding, Elara and Kaelen shared a look of strained relief. This could not keep happening. The secret of the portal was a burden too heavy for just two people to carry. That evening, they approached the three most trusted village elders, the ones who had shown the deepest understanding of their quest. They revealed the garden's true purpose and the fragile bridge it held. "We need your wisdom," Elara explained. "If another call for help comes, and we are not here, or if we need more than 2 pairs of hands, the realms could suffer for it." The elders, after a long, silent moment of contemplation, agreed. Their solemn vow of secrecy was a new layer of protection, but it also multiplied their responsibilities exponentially. They were no longer just two friends keeping a secret. They were the core of a small, clandestine network. Days later, a gift drifted through the portal, a single, weightless feather that shimmered with the colors of a dawn sky. When Elara held it, she felt a brief, lifting sensation, as if the earth's pull had gently released her. It was a tool of thanks from the cloud whale pod, a token of levitation. But the wind warden's note that accompanied it carried a subtle urgency. "The currents from Aquafallia feel heavy with concern," it read. "Your steady hands may soon be needed where the waters gather." The warning from Aquafallia arrived on a scroll of kelp that felt cool and damp to the touch. The newly restored coral reefs, vibrant with color and life, were now threatened by unpredictable, shifting tides that surged and retreated without rhythm. The balance was fragile, and the realms were calling for aid. Without a moment to lose, Elara and Kaelen stepped into the center of their garden, the shimmering levitation feather held between them. A single shared thought was all it took, and the ground fell away, the world blurring into a streak of green and blue as they were lifted effortlessly to the highest cliff, overlooking the sea. The ancient tide balancing ritual, a complex pattern of hand gestures and harmonic chants, learned from their connection to the waterstone, required absolute precision. Their movements had to mirror the push and pull of the moon, their voices a steady anchor in the chaos. Just as they found their rhythm, a sudden squall swept in from the open ocean, whipping their hair and clothes. The stinging rain and howling wind, a direct challenge to their concentration. For a brief moment, the magic wavered, the tides below churning with renewed intensity. Their eyes met, and without a word, they began to sing the ancient elf hymn, the same melody that had calmed the wind wraith. Their voices, though strained, wove together into a single, unshakable thread of sound. The magic stabilized, flowing from their joined will out across the vast distance, and far away in Aquafallia, the turbulent waters gradually stilled, settling back into their gentle, eternal rhythm. The success was profound, a testament to their growing bond with the realms, but the effort was immediate and deep. As the last note faded, a deep weariness settled into their bones, the energy required to influence a kingdom from afar, leaving them drained and unsteady. They made their way back to the garden, settling onto a soft patch of moss near the central portal. Exhausted but fulfilled, they noticed the star-shaped bud had unfurled another delicate petal, its light pulsing with a stronger, steadier beat, as if the very garden was growing in response to their steadfast care. The air in the elders' meeting hall was thick with the scent of aged wood and quiet tension. Elara stood before the formal council, Kaelen a steady presence at her side, and spoke of everything, from the first hum of the Runestone to the fragile star bridge blooming in her garden. She held nothing back, presenting not just their incredible experiences, but the portal's existence as a solemn responsibility they could no longer bear alone. A hushed silence fell, broken only by the crackling fire. Then the debate began, swirling with passionate voices. Some elders saw the portal as the village's greatest vulnerability, a beacon that would inevitably draw dangerous attention from the wider world. They argued fiercely for its immediate closure, for a return to the safety of quiet isolation. Others, their eyes alight with a long-forgotten wonder, saw it as their people's restored birthright, a sacred duty they were honor-bound to accept. The discussion stretched on, the fate of the connection hanging in the balance. After what felt like an age, a vote was called. The motion to protect the secret and establish a small, carefully trained group to handle realm-related matters passed. But the divide in the room was a palpable force. Elara, seeing the lingering concern in the eyes of those who had been outvoted, made a decisive promise. She vowed to provide the council with regular, detailed updates, and to institute strict, unbreakable rules for any portal use, a framework of transparency and control that finally eased the deepest worries. The council adjourned as dusk painted the windows in shades of violet and gold. Stepping outside, Elara felt the immense weight of leadership settle upon her shoulders, a burden far heavier than any runestone. Yet as she looked around at the villagers now sharing in this profound secret, she also felt the unmistakable warmth of a community united, their shared purpose, a new kind of magic, weaving them together. This shared responsibility for the kingdoms bound them closer than ever, but it also meant that any future challenge would now be a weight carried by all. The first Starfall Festival transformed the village square into a living constellation. Lanterns, carefully crafted from glowing moss and enchanted parchment, floated gently above the rooftops, while the air itself hummed with ancient melodies and the shared warmth of storytelling. It was more than a celebration. It was a conscious act of remembrance, a way to weave the epic tale of the early kingdoms directly into the fabric of their daily lives. Elders who had once urged caution now shared their own childhood fragments of lore, and children listened with wide eyes, their imaginations alight with visions of sky islands and sunken palaces. This new tradition became the community's heartbeat, a yearly ritual that fortified their cultural pride and ensured the wisdom of the past would be a guiding light for the future. As the festivities reached their peak, a brilliant streak of silver split the night sky. A single shooting star arced over the gathered crowd, its light so vivid it cast fleeting shadows on the ground below. A collective gasp rippled through the village, followed by a split in perception. Some saw it as a celestial blessing, a final sign of approval from the ancient elf kings. Others, however, whispered of old stories where such events heralded great change, viewing the star as a silent omen from an unpredictable cosmos. Elara watched the star's path fade, feeling not fear, but a profound sense of connection. She saw it as a message of continuity, a reminder that the realms were alive and watching. Later that night, by the soft light of a single candle, she added a new chapter to her book, carefully illustrating the star's journey and framing the event as a symbol of the ever-present, watchful peace between their world and the magical kingdoms. This act of recording cemented the festival's legacy, ensuring the story would be passed down not as a forgotten legend, but as a lived and celebrated history. It embedded the truth of the early kingdoms into the very identity of the village, making every child who released a lantern a part of the ongoing narrative. As the last lantern flickered and faded in the distance, Elara and Kalin stood together, their faces turned toward the silent, star-dusted sky, their hearts filled with a quiet wonder for the mysteries the future still held. The whispers of the ancient kingdoms did not fade with the telling. They took root in the most fertile ground of all. A small group of village children, their minds alight with the stories from Elara's book, began gathering under the great elder tree. They called themselves the Realm Explorers. With Elara's gentle guidance, they learned not just the grand tales of Sylvanoria and Aeralon, but the simple, foundational principles of their heritage, the songs that calmed the spirit, and the respectful gestures used to greet a growing thing. Their projects were small and wondrous, miniature gardens of glowing herbs, nurtured with patient care, and intricate models of the sky islands, built from river clay and fallen twigs. This was more than play. It was the first step in a lifelong stewardship, fostering a deep, instinctive respect for the tradition they were now part of. But curiosity, when fueled by such powerful stories, can sometimes outpace caution. One of the youngest explorers, a boy named Finn, grew impatient waiting for his moon blossom to sprout. Remembering an illustration of a growth spell in Elara's chronicle, he tried to mimic the hand motions, whispering sounds that were almost the right words. For a breathtaking moment, it worked. The plant surged upward, its stem thickening and leaves unfurling at an astonishing rate. Then, with a soft sound, it grew too tall and too fast, its own weight causing it to topple over, the glowing petals fading almost instantly. Finn stared at the fallen plant, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and regret. Elara, who had seen the surge of wild energy from across the garden, did not scold him. She knelt beside the boy and the faded blossom, her voice calm and understanding. She explained that such energy is like a river. Its power can give life to entire kingdoms, but without the banks of knowledge and patience to guide it, it can overflow. This was not a failure, but a lesson. She showed him and the other children how to gently encourage a plant's growth with a steady, daily song, helping them feel the difference between forcing nature and partnering with it. The incident became a cornerstone of the club's teachings, a living example that true power requires an even greater responsibility. The club's existence guaranteed that the ancient knowledge would live on in eager young hearts, yet it also demanded constant, watchful mentoring to ensure that youthful enthusiasm was always tempered by wisdom. Watching the children later that day, carefully tending to their new projects with a renewed sense of purpose. Elara felt a profound wave of hope. The legacy of the elves was no longer a secret to be guarded by a few, but a living seed, patiently sprouting in the hands of the next generation. The runestone's warmth bloomed against Elara's chest one quiet evening, its light spilling across the floor of her study to paint the air with the familiar continents of Sylvanoria and Aeralon. But the map was different this time. Ethereal lines, faint as spider silk, branched from the edges of the known realms, sketching coastlines and mountain ranges that held no names in any of her books. These were paths to kingdoms not yet discovered, realms of magic waiting in a silence deeper than any they had yet broken. The adventure that had felt so complete was merely a prologue. A thrill of pure wonder raced through her, quickly followed by a sobering chill. New lands meant new magics, new challenges, and potential uncertainties their current hard-won peace was not yet prepared to face. The experiences they had faced were a lesson, one they could not afford to forget. Her initial impulse to follow the new paths immediately was tempered by a deeper wisdom. To rush forward now, with the village still learning and the bonds between the realms still tender, would be to risk everything they had rebuilt. The true journey was not outward, but inward, toward preparation and strength. Her decision was clear. She would not be the one to walk these new roads, not yet. Her role was to ensure that when the time came, an entire community of guardians would be ready, their knowledge deep and their hearts united. The unfolding map was both a promise and a reminder, a sign that the balance of the world was a living, breathing thing that required constant, gentle stewardship. As the last shimmering line faded from the air, Elara carefully placed the runestone back into its carved wooden box, the latch closing with a soft, final click. A slow, contented smile touched her lips, not of an ending, but of a patient beginning. Their great tale was simply one chapter in a story, still being written across the stars. The years of peace were a tapestry woven with quiet lessons and growing trust. But time, like any river, has its own unpredictable currents. It began with a subtle wrongness in the air, a discordant hum that vibrated through the soles of their feet and set the leaves of the great elder tree trembling. The sky above Aeralon swirled with unnatural colors, while in Sylvanoria, the ancient trees groaned as if in pain. The realms were not merely troubled, they were falling out of tune with one another, a harmonic collapse that threatened to tear the very fabric of their restored world. Elara, her hair now touched with silver, but her eyes as clear as ever, felt the runestone flare into a panicked heat against her chest. She met Kaelin's gaze, and in that single look, a lifetime of understanding passed between them. This was the storm their entire journey had prepared them to face. There was no time for fear, only for the wisdom they had cultivated. They did not stand alone. With a voice that carried the calm of deep-rooted certainty, Elara called the village to the garden, while Kalin sent a pulse of light through the star portal, a silent summons to the guardian spirits. The response was immediate. The wind warden materialized in a gust of cloud-scented air. The wood spirit rose from the soil, and the water weaver flowed from the garden's central pond. The village, from the eldest elder to the youngest realm explorer, stood ready, their faces set with a determination born from shared stories and a common home to protect. The solution was not a single spell, but a symphony, Under the rare and perfect alignment of 3 moons, every soul gathered in the village square, each holding a fragment of the legacy, a glowing herb from the garden, a polished river stone humming with memory, or simply their own open hands filled with intention. Elara raised the Fireheart gem, its light a steady, warming beat. Kaelen wove a lattice of golden energy above them, a conductor's framework for the ritual. Then they began to sing, not one song, but many, all harmonizing into a single, powerful chord of unity. The children's clear voices wove with the elders' deep chants. The wind spirit's breathy whistle blended with the water spirit's liquid melody, and the living wood's rustling rhythm grounded it all. Their combined magic flowed outwards, a river of stabilized energy, following the pathways Elara and Kaelen had first charted. It was not a battle against the imbalance, but a gentle, overwhelming act of realignment. In Sylvanoria, the trees stilled, their roots drinking in the harmony. In Aeralon, the chaotic skies smoothed into a serene, star-dusted expanse. In Aquafallia, the churning tides settled into their eternal, gentle rhythm. The crisis did not end with a bang, but with a deep, resonating silence that felt more profound than any sound, a peace that settled into the very foundation of the world, secured not by 2 heroes, but by an entire community united in purpose. The aligned moons shone down, their light a silent blessing on a truth now proven beyond any doubt, that the most powerful magic of all is the one we choose to share. The profound silence that followed the great harmony was a testament to a bond now unbreakable. In the village square, surrounded by students whose hands had woven the stabilizing magic and elders whose voices had anchored the ancient songs, Elara and Kaelen watched the realms shine with a light that was both brilliant and gentle. The sky islands of Aeralon floated like serene jewels. Sylvanoria's forests pulsed with a deep, vibrant emerald, and the distant shimmer of Aquafallia's waterfalls painted the horizon with rainbows. This was no longer the fleeting triumph of 2 adventurers, but the enduring peace of a world fully integrated, its magical and mortal hearts beating as one. Their incredible bedtime story had taken root in the real world, becoming a living legend that would be told and retold, not as a fable of a distant past, but as a guiding principle for the future. It is a reminder that illuminates our own world as well, that the courage to face the unknown, the strength of true friendship, and a deep respect for the wisdom of those who came before are the most powerful lights we can carry into any darkness. The legacy of the Ancient Elves now lives in every child who tends a glowing garden, and in every community that chooses unity over fear, proving that some stories, once awakened, never truly end.